When I joined the military, I thought everything would be fine. I wasn't the best, the smartest, or the fastest, but I believed if I worked hard, if I did my job, everything would fall into place. It never does, though. And one of the first days in, I realized something I wasn't prepared for. The brutal truth. I'm Sergeant James Jim Carson, and I don't fit the usual mold of a soldier. I didn't come from a family of military men or a wealthy background. I grew up in a small, struggling town, a place where you either stayed or left, and I left. I joined the Army because I wanted a chance to prove I was capable of something bigger, something that could change my life. I didn't have connections. I didn't have anything special, but I believed in myself. It all started when I was assigned to Captain Davis's squad, a guy who I thought would be a good mentor. Turns out I was wrong. My first real encounter with him showed me how wrong I was. One morning during a roll call, the whole squad lined up, ready for orders. I could already hear the whispers behind me. Corporal Thompson, that guy who seemed to make it his mission to mock me, was doing it again. "Look at Carson. That guy's nothing. Just a poor kid pretending to be a soldier." I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. His voice, sharp and mocking, was all too familiar. I could feel my face burn, but I didn't react. What was the point? If I stood up for myself, it would only make things worse. No one cared about a soldier like me. No one cared about a guy from a small town with nothing but his determination. I stood there, head down, fists clenched, trying to swallow my pride. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just some casual remark. They looked at me like I didn't belong, like I wasn't worth anything. You know that feeling? That deep down sense of being belittled, of being judged without anyone actually knowing you? It's like you're invisible, but not in a good way. It's like you're being erased by everyone around you. That's exactly how I felt. No one knew what I had sacrificed to get here. No one knew how hard I worked, how many nights I spent awake, studying and preparing. But here, in the Army, I was just another guy with no name. I wasn't even a threat to the others. What's worse is that I thought it would be different. I thought if I just worked hard enough, proved myself enough, they'd see me for who I really was. But instead, I was just one of the guys who had to take the scraps, the jokes, and the sideways glances. And it wasn't just Thompson. There was Sergeant Williams, who, when he first spoke to me, did so with all the coldness of someone who had already decided I wasn't good enough. "Carson, don't mess this up, all right?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're here because we don't have better options." Those were his exact words. It didn't take long before I realized that for some of these guys, I was nothing more than the bottom rung of the ladder. They were so sure of themselves, so comfortable in their arrogance. They didn't even think twice about looking down on me. I was just that guy, the one who didn't belong, the one who wasn't supposed to make it, the one who wasn't a soldier. But here's the thing, when someone looks at you like that, when they tell you you're not worth their time, you can either fold or you can push back. The problem was, I didn't have much of a choice. I wasn't about to let their words define me. So I stayed quiet. But it wasn't because I was afraid. It was because I knew, deep down, that if I showed them who I really was, they'd have to pay attention. And that day would come. It had to. But for now, I kept my head down, did my job, and bit my tongue. Because sometimes the loudest voices in the room aren't the ones that matter the most. It's the quiet ones who bide their time, ready to make their move when the moment's right. I didn't say much, not at first. I didn't have to. The truth is, I spent a lot of time observing. I watched how people reacted, how they handled pressure, how they led, and how they failed to lead. I had learned from the streets, from growing up in a place where survival wasn't just about being tough, but about being smart. In the military, survival meant proving yourself every single day. But that was the thing. No one cared about your past. No one cared about your experiences unless they could see it in action. You had to earn their respect. So I kept my head down, did the job, and shut my mouth. I didn't try to impress anyone. I knew better than that. Sergeant Williams had his doubts, and honestly, I wasn't about to change his mind. But I knew one thing. I was here to work, and I wasn't going to stop. There was a training exercise that had been looming over us for weeks. We all knew it was coming, and we all dreaded it. The obstacle course, it was designed to break people, to expose weaknesses. Corporal Thompson, of course, was already running his mouth about how the new guy was going to fail. "What's Carson going to do? Trip over his boots?" He said it loud enough for everyone to hear, like it was some kind of joke. Most of the guys laughed. I didn't. Instead, I set my jaw, focused on what I needed to do, and stayed quiet. I wasn't a show-off. I didn't need to be. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't here to just get by. I was here to survive, and I was damn good at it. The obstacle course was brutal, full of mud pits, walls to climb, ropes to scale, and enough physical punishment to make even the toughest reconsider their career choices. When my turn came, I took a deep breath, pushed my nerves down, and ran. I didn't look at anyone. I just focused on the next obstacle. The first wall, I scaled it without breaking a sweat. The ropes, I climbed, like I'd been doing it my whole life. When I hit the mud pit, I dove in without hesitation, feeling the cold, sticky sludge coat my skin. I pushed through it. I didn't slow down. The whole course felt like a blur, but I was in control. Every muscle in my body screamed, but I wasn't about to stop. When I crossed the finish line, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't need to. What I needed was for them to stop thinking of me as the guy who couldn't make it. I was tired of proving myself over and over. I wanted respect, not sympathy. Sergeant Williams was standing by the finish line with a clipboard, like he was grading us. He barely looked up as I crossed, but there was something in his eyes. Maybe it was a flicker of respect. Maybe he was just surprised that I didn't fall flat on my face like everyone expected. The rest of the squad? They were quiet. I could feel their eyes on me, but no one said anything. Not then. It was just a brief silence, but to me it was everything. In that moment, I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to hear them say I was good enough. I knew it. But you can't win them all. There were days when they still treated me like I was invisible. They'd ignore me in the mess hall, talk over me when I had a point to make. And there were times when I'd overhear them, talking about how I got lucky or how my success was just a fluke. I heard it, and I kept moving. I didn't fight back with words. I didn't fight back with anger. I fought back by doing the work. I showed up day after day, no matter how they treated me. I proved it wasn't luck, it was grit. There was this one night, late in the barracks, when I was cleaning my gear, polishing my boots for the next day. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're alone even when you're surrounded by people. I was just lost in my thoughts when Private Daniels, a kid who had been pretty hard on me in the beginning, came up to me. I didn't know what to expect. "You did good today," he said, out of nowhere. He wasn't looking for anything, just saying it. I just nodded, didn't look at him. "Thanks," I said, but I didn't really mean it for the compliment. I meant it for the fact that for the first time, someone had acknowledged that I belonged here without a single word of mockery attached. And that was the thing. I wasn't looking for applause. I wasn't looking for everyone to suddenly like me. I was just doing my job. But as time went on, I started noticing small changes. I started noticing that I wasn't the one they ignored anymore. I was the one they came to for advice. They still didn't respect me the way I wanted, but the silence was starting to feel like something else, like recognition. And even though I knew I still had a long way to go, I felt something shift in me. It wasn't about what they thought anymore. It was about how I felt about myself. I had something to prove, not to them, but to me. Because if I could keep going, if I could keep pushing through all the doubt and the quiet sneers, then nothing could stop me. So every day I kept grinding. I wasn't looking for validation, but it was coming anyway. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was there. And that was all I needed. Because deep down, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't done yet. It was a typical morning when everything changed. The air in the barracks was thick with the kind of tension that only comes when a big operation is about to go down. We were preparing for a field exercise, a simulation of an enemy ambush. I'd done my fair share of drills before, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about the exercise. It was about proving myself. This was my shot. This was the moment I could show everyone who I really was. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't going to be just another day in the field. As usual, Sergeant Williams was running the show, barking orders like always. But something was off. He had that look in his eye, the kind of look that made me think something bigger was going down. As we geared up and moved out, I could hear the whispers. Carson's still going to mess this up. You know he will. It wasn't just Thompson anymore. It was Private Collins too, and a few others. The word on the street was clear. They didn't think I belonged here. They didn't think I could handle this kind of mission. But I wasn't about to back down. The mission started and everything went according to plan, until it didn't. Out of nowhere, the entire field exercise turned into chaos. Gunfire rang out from behind the trees, and the enemy we were supposed to simulate quickly became all too real. Private Daniels was hit, his leg caught by a ricochet. It wasn't a drill anymore. It was life and death. That's when everything shifted. Sergeant Williams froze for a moment. He was trying to regain control, but it wasn't working. His leadership crumbled, and I could see it in his eyes. Fear. I didn't have time to process it. All I knew was that Daniels was hurt, and I had to act. No one else moved. It was like the whole team was paralyzed by the shock of it all. But I wasn't. I grabbed Daniels, hauled him behind cover, and started applying pressure to his wound. I didn't hesitate. I just moved. It wasn't fast enough, though. I could see the blood soaking through his uniform. His face was pale, his eyes unfocused. That's when I knew I had to do something no one expected me to do. I grabbed my radio and gave orders, loud, sharp, clear. Private Collins, cover left. Thompson, get those supplies from the drop. Williams, get your head in the game, or I swear. I didn't even let him respond. I was already moving, coordinating the team like I'd been leading them for years, not weeks. The chaos faded into the background as I focused. I wasn't thinking about their doubts or how they had laughed at me in the past. I was thinking about one thing, keeping Daniels alive. That was all that mattered. And then, for the first time since I joined this unit, I saw something I hadn't expected. Sergeant Williams, the guy who had been so quick to undermine me, stepped forward. He looked at me, his face tight, but there was something else there, something I hadn't seen before. Respect. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. But the way he followed my lead without hesitation, the way he covered me while I dragged Daniels to safety, it spoke louder than any words could. We finished the mission, not as a team of doubters, but as a unit. Daniels was rushed to the medics, and we managed to finish the day with only minor injuries. When we got back to base, there wasn't any celebration. No one was patting me on the back. But there was this silence, not the kind that comes from awkwardness, but the kind that comes from people realizing that they've misjudged someone. They knew what I could do now. They couldn't pretend I didn't belong. Not anymore. The next morning, Sergeant Williams pulled me aside. "Carson," he said in that gruff voice of his, "you did good. I was wrong about you." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. He didn't have to say it, but hearing it felt like something breaking inside me. I wasn't that guy anymore, the one they laughed at or dismissed. I was the guy who saved their asses. But here's the thing. It wasn't about them anymore. It wasn't about winning anyone's approval. The truth was, I didn't need anyone to believe in me except me. I had proved it to myself, and that was all. That mattered. It wasn't until I was back in my bunk that night, just staring up at the ceiling, that it hit me. This wasn't just some random moment. This wasn't just about saving a life. It was about breaking down the walls I had built around myself. For the first time, I felt like I had control. I was in the driver's seat. This was my path, and I was damn well going to walk it with my head high. The whispers about me faded. The doubts disappeared. And while I wasn't looking for their validation, I had earned something more valuable. I had earned my own respect. The days after that mission were quieter, but they felt different. For once, the tension that usually hung over the barracks seemed to lift. I could tell people were talking. I could hear it in the way they whispered when I walked by, the way they didn't look at me like I was the invisible guy anymore. Sergeant Williams started giving me nods of approval when I passed him in the hallway. It wasn't anything huge, but it was something. Something I hadn't seen before. Something real. But even as I got more respect, It didn't feel like it was about them anymore. There was a different feeling that came with this newfound recognition. A quiet satisfaction, sure, but also a weight I wasn't expecting. I had earned my spot here, but it was becoming clear that proving myself was just the beginning. It wasn't enough for me to just survive. I had to figure out who I was in all of this. Was I just a soldier doing his job, or was I something more? Something that didn't just go through the motions, but actually made a difference? Because now, I could feel it. The guys, the squad, they were beginning to look at me not just as a fellow soldier, but as someone they could count on. That scared me. I wasn't used to being the guy others looked up to. I wasn't used to being the one people came to for guidance, for advice. Sure, I had saved Daniels, but I didn't want to be defined by one moment. I wanted to be more than that. But how could I be more than the guy who had just barely scraped by all his life? I still didn't know who I was. But one thing was for sure. I wasn't the same guy I had been when I first stepped into this army. Then came the real test. We were assigned to a new mission, an overseas operation. A big one. It was everything. All the training, all the grueling hours, every second spent making sure we were ready. This was the moment that everything had led up to. There was no going back. The stakes were real, and I was going to have to lead a team into hostile territory. This wasn't just about surviving. This was about leading. I was about to find out if I was really cut out for this, if I could be the kind of leader I'd always imagined. The night before we left, I was in the barracks packing my gear. The place was quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the air conditioning and the rustle of gear being shifted around. I sat there staring at my boots, knowing what was coming. I wasn't nervous, not like before, but there was a part of me, a small part, that couldn't help but think back to everything that had led up to this, to the moments where people didn't believe in me, to the doubt, the jokes, the whispered insults, and now, here I was. I wasn't some nobody. I wasn't just the guy who followed orders. I was the one giving them. The next day I stood in front of the team, all geared up and ready to go. I could feel the eyes on me, different than before. I wasn't sure what they saw, but I wasn't going to give them any reason to doubt me now. I had proven myself in the field, but this was different. We were about to step into a war zone. This wasn't training anymore. This was real, and now it was on me to make sure we all came back alive. "All right, listen up," I called out, my voice steady. "We've been training for this, and we know the risks, but we're here for one reason, to get the job done and make sure we all come back safe. You follow me, you watch each other's backs, and we finish this thing together. Got it?" There was a beat of silence. Then slowly, one by one, the team nodded, and I could see it in their eyes. There was respect there, real respect, the kind that can't be earned in a day, but it's built up slowly, through actions and choices. As we moved out, I could hear the guys murmuring behind me. It wasn't about me being the underdog anymore. No, now they were talking about how much they trusted me. They didn't just think I was some guy who got lucky. They were starting to believe I had what it took to lead them. And damn, that felt good. The mission went smoothly, but it wasn't without its scares. We had a close call during an ambush, but we handled it. We got through it. And when we finally made it back to base, everyone was still standing. They were talking about me, but it wasn't in whispers anymore. It was with recognition. They saw me for who I had become. Not just the guy who didn't belong. Not just the guy they thought wouldn't make it. But the guy who led them. The guy who had their backs when it counted. But it wasn't just about the mission. It was about something bigger. I realized that in this life, in the Army, and in the world beyond, you don't get respect just because you demand it. You get it because you earn it. Not through words, not through complaints, but through the quiet things. The decisions you make when no one's looking. The moments when you stand up, even when you're scared as hell. I wasn't the same person who first walked into this military base. And it wasn't just the uniform or the badges. It was the understanding that I could lead, I could inspire, and maybe, just maybe, I could change how people saw me, but more importantly, how I saw myself. I wasn't done, not by a long shot. This was just the beginning. The days after the mission felt like a strange mix of clarity and heaviness. It was as if everything had changed. But at the same time, nothing had really changed at all. The whispers about me, the ones that used to sting, had quieted down. But the truth was, I didn't care about that anymore. It wasn't the praise that mattered. It wasn't the respect from my teammates or the nods from Sergeant Williams that gave me satisfaction. It was the realization that I had become the person I needed to be, whether they saw it or not. But life, as it always does, kept moving forward. I could feel the change inside me, but I wasn't sure how to show it, how to fit into this new skin I had found. There was a tension in the air, not from the men around me, but from myself. I knew I wasn't done proving myself. There was still more to do, more to give. The road ahead wasn't a straight line, and I knew I had a lot to learn. That's when the phone call came. I was just finishing up my last shift at the base, cleaning my gear when my phone buzzed. The number wasn't familiar, but I picked it up anyway. Private Carson? The voice on the other end was clipped, official. Yeah, this is him. I could already feel the weight of something heavy coming. Get to the CO's office now. You're needed for a special assignment. Immediate deployment. Immediate deployment. I didn't even have time to think. I grabbed my jacket, my boots, and my pack. Not even bothering to ask questions. When you get a call like that, you know it's serious. I headed straight to the office. The CO, Colonel Harris, was sitting behind his desk looking more serious than I'd ever seen him. His usual confident smirk was gone, replaced by a hard edge. Carson, he said, his voice low, we need you for a covert operation. We're going into a hot zone. You'll be leading a new unit. The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't just being called up for some routine mission. This was real. This was dangerous. You've earned our trust, Carson. I need you out there. Trust. It was something I hadn't expected to hear. The same man who once doubted me, the one who had written me off as just another guy from the bottom, was now telling me I'd earned his trust. But I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or just another sign that the real test was still ahead of me. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. The tension in my chest was overwhelming, but I didn't let it show. Not now. This wasn't the time for doubt. The days that followed were a blur. The preparation, the briefings, the strategy sessions. It felt like the whole world was moving in fast forward while I was stuck trying to catch up. The pressure was building, and I could feel the weight of it pressing down on me. There was a part of me, just a small part, that wasn't sure if I was ready, but I pushed it aside. I couldn't afford to second-guess myself. We were being sent into the heart of an active war zone. The mission was clear: retrieve sensitive intel, secure a downed aircraft, and get out alive. Simple on paper, but no mission like this ever goes as planned. The team I was leading, they were a mix of seasoned soldiers and new recruits. None of them had worked with me before, but I knew they were counting on me to make the right calls to get them through it. It wasn't just about my survival anymore. It was about theirs too. The night before we deployed, I found myself alone in my barracks, staring at the gear I'd been packing. I could hear the sounds of the others getting ready, preparing for the mission, but I was still, quiet, thinking. Is this really happening? I muttered to myself. I wasn't scared, not anymore, but I was questioning if I was the right man for the job. That small doubt, the one I had buried so many times before, was creeping back in. But there was no time for second-guessing. I had a team depending on me. I had to lead them through this, no matter what. I remembered something my dad used to say back when he was still around. He wasn't in the military, but he taught me more about life than any officer could. The moment you doubt yourself, he'd said, that's the moment you've lost the fight. Keep moving forward, even if it's just one step. And so, I stepped forward. The day of the operation came. We were dropped in hot, right in the middle of enemy lines. The first few hours were calm, almost too calm, but deep down I knew the storm was coming. And sure enough, it hit hard. Gunfire. Explosions. It felt like everything around me was falling apart, but I kept my head, kept my eyes on the mission. This was what I was made for. This was where I had to prove it wasn't just luck that had gotten me here. As we pushed through the chaos, I realized something. All those moments of doubt, they were gone. There was no place for them here. I was in control. I was leading. And for the first time, I wasn't just fighting for survival, I was fighting for something bigger. My team, our mission, it was bigger than any of us. And that made all the difference. The mission was a success, but not without sacrifice. We lost 2 men. The weight of that loss hit harder than I thought it would. But I also knew this was the cost of the job, the cost of leadership. I had to carry that burden. We all did. After the operation, when we finally made it back, the feeling wasn't triumph. It wasn't relief. It was something deeper. Something that told me I had truly earned my place here. Not just in the eyes of the men I led, but in my own eyes. I had become the leader I never thought I could be. I was no longer the guy who doubted himself at every turn. I was the one who stood strong when everything else was falling apart. Back at base, I received a note from Colonel Harris. Simple but powerful. You've earned more than just trust, Carson. You've earned respect. And just like that, I realized this was my new beginning, not because of the missions or the success, but because I had finally stopped questioning whether I belonged. I did belong, and no one could take that away from me. At the heart of this story is a powerful lesson about resilience and self-worth. It teaches us that in the face of adversity and injustice, we must not remain silent or accept the labels others place on us. Much like the saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," the challenges we face, the prejudice, the doubts, and the obstacles, are not there to break us, but to reveal the strength we often don't see in ourselves. Jim's journey is a testament to the fact that true value is not defined by others' opinions, but by the quiet courage to stand up, push through, and rise above negativity. It's a reminder that we don't have to be what others expect of us. The world may try to shape us into something we're not, but we always have the power to define who we truly are. And through this process, we not only discover our own worth, but also learn to lead with integrity and respect for others, embracing diversity and fairness along the way. In life, we all face moments when we must break free from toxic environments or relationships that hold us back. The key is to believe in our own value, rise above the negativity, and find the courage to create positive change. Remember, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. If you've been inspired by Jim's story, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you have similar experiences or lessons you'd like to share? Don't forget to like the video if it resonated with you, and subscribe to the channel to stay connected with more stories that make you think deeply. Wishing you peace and strength as you navigate your own path forward, and may you always find the courage to stand tall, no matter the challenges you face.